The wind was a living thing that night. It screamed between the metal buildings of Kepler-7 colony like a hungry animal. Ice crystals flew through the air like tiny knives. The temperature had dropped to 60 degrees below zero, and anyone caught outside would die within minutes. Kang Do-yun walked as fast as he could through the storm. His daughter Yuna was pressed against his chest, wrapped in his thick coat. She was only 7 years old, small enough that he could carry her. Her face was buried in his shoulder to protect her from the terrible cold. Do-yun was a mechanic. He fixed machines at the mining station on this distant world. His wife had died 3 years ago from a sickness that the colony doctors could not cure. Now it was just him and Yuna, alone on this frozen planet at the edge of human space. The repair docks were only a 15-minute walk from their small home, but tonight, in this storm, those 15 minutes felt like forever. Do-yun could barely see 3 feet in front of him. The snow was so thick it was like walking through white curtains. He was thinking about hot soup and warm blankets when Yuna lifted her head. "Appa," she said, her voice was almost lost in the wind. "Appa, what is that?" Do-yun stopped walking. He looked where his daughter was pointing. Against the colony's outer wall, half buried in snow, was a small dark shape. At first he thought it was garbage, maybe a broken machine part that someone had thrown away. But then the shape moved, just a little, just enough. "Dad, she's freezing," Yuna cried out. "Dad, there's someone there." Do-yun felt his heart jump. He ran toward the wall, holding Yuna tight. As he got closer, he could see what it was. It was a child. No, not a human child. The skin was the wrong color. It was blue, like the sky on Earth that Do-yun had only seen in pictures. The child was wearing torn clothes that were much too thin for this weather. Her eyes were closed. Her body was shaking. An alien, a young alien girl alone in the storm. Do-yun kneeled down. He touched the girl's face. Her skin was ice cold and it was turning gray at the edges. That was bad. That meant she was dying. "Is she alive?" Yuna asked. Her eyes were wide with fear. "Barely," Do-yun said. He looked around, hoping to see someone who might be looking for this child. A parent, a guardian, anyone. But there was only the empty storm and the howling wind. He made a decision. He did not think about colony rules. He did not think about paperwork or regulations. He only thought about the dying child in front of him. Do-yun took off his outer coat. The cold hit him like a hammer, but he ignored it. He wrapped the coat around the alien girl and lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. She was so thin he could feel her bones. "Hold onto my neck," he told Yuna. His daughter climbed onto his back and wrapped her small arms around him. Now he was carrying both children through the storm. The walk home was the hardest thing Do-yun had ever done. The cold ate into his body, his fingers became numb, his face felt like it was made of wood, but he kept walking, one step, then another, then another. When he finally reached his small house and pushed through the door, he nearly collapsed, but there was no time to rest. He put the alien girl on the couch. She was still breathing, but only barely. Her lips had turned dark purple. Her whole body was shaking so hard her teeth were clicking together. "Yuna, get all the blankets from my bed," Do-yun said. "Hurry." His daughter ran to obey. Do-yun turned up the heating unit as high as it would go. He boiled water for warm cloths. He remembered what the colony doctors had taught everyone about treating cold sickness. For the next hour he worked without stopping. He wrapped the alien girl in blankets. He put warm cloths on her chest and stomach. He made soup and fed it to her one small spoon at a time, even though she was barely conscious. Yuna sat beside the couch the whole time. She held the alien girl's hand and talked to her in a soft voice. "It's okay," Yuna whispered. "You're safe now. My dad will fix you. He fixes everything." Slowly, very slowly, the alien girl's skin began to turn from gray back to blue. Her shaking became less violent. Her breathing became more steady. Around midnight, her eyes opened. Do-yun had never seen eyes like that before. They were silver, like coins, with no white part at all. They looked up at him with pure terror. The girl tried to move away, but she was too weak. She made a sound like a small animal caught in a trap. "It's okay," Do-yun said. He spoke in the calmest voice he could manage. "You are safe. No one will hurt you here." The girl did not seem to understand. She looked around the small house with wild eyes. When she saw Yuna, she froze. Yuna smiled at her. It was a simple, honest smile. The smile of a child who did not know about politics or aliens or immigration laws. She only saw another child who was scared and hurt. "Hi," Yuna said. "I'm Yuna, what's your name?" The alien girl stared at her for a long moment. Then, very slowly, she whispered something. Her voice was so quiet that Do-yun could barely hear it. "Veli," she said, "I am Veli." That was the only word she spoke that night. After saying her name, she closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. But it was a healthy sleep now, not the sleep of someone dying. Do-yun sat in his chair and watched over both children. Yuna had fallen asleep on the floor next to the couch, still holding Veli's hand. He knew there would be trouble tomorrow. The colony had strict rules about aliens. Any non-human visitor had to be registered and processed. There were forms to fill, officials to notify, procedures to follow. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now, there was only a little girl who had almost died in the snow, and a family that had saved her. The heating unit hummed. The wind screamed outside, and inside the small house, 3 people slept peacefully. When morning came, Administrator Beek Jiwoo arrived at their door. Someone had seen Do-yun carrying something through the storm last night. Someone had reported it. Jiwoo was a tall woman with a serious face. She looked at the alien girl sleeping on the couch, then looked at Do-yun. "You know this is against regulation," she said. "Unregistered aliens must be processed through proper channels. There could be diseases, security risks. This child could be dangerous." Do-yun stood in front of the couch. His arms were crossed. His face was calm but firm. "She is 7 years old," he said. "Maybe 8. She was dying in the snow. What was I supposed to do? Leave her there? You should have called the authorities. By the time they came, she would be dead." Jiwoo opened her mouth to argue, but before she could speak, Yuna stepped forward. The little girl stood between the administrator and the couch. Her hands were on her hips. Her eyes were fierce. "She's staying," Yuna said. Her voice was strong and clear. "She's ours now." Jiwoo looked surprised. She was not used to being challenged by a 7-year-old. Do-yun put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. He looked at Administrator Jiwoo with steady eyes. "My daughter is right," he said. "The girl stays with us. I will take full responsibility." Jiwoo studied them for a long moment. Then she sighed and shook her head. "There will be paperwork," she said. "Lots of paperwork and inspections and questions from higher up." "I understand. This could cause problems for you, Do-yun. Serious problems." Do-yun looked at Veli, who was now awake and watching them with frightened silver eyes. She looked so small, so alone, so scared. "I know," he said, "but she needs a home. I have one to give. That seems simple enough to me." Jiwoo left that morning with a promise to return with proper documentation. But she did not send security officers to take Veli away. Perhaps, somewhere deep inside, she understood. After she was gone, Do-yun sat down next to the couch. Veli watched him carefully, like a wild animal that was not sure if it should run or stay. "Are you hungry?" Do-yun asked. Veli did not answer. She probably did not understand his words. But when he brought a bowl of warm rice porridge and held out the spoon, she took it with trembling hands. She ate like someone who had not eaten in days, maybe weeks. She scraped the bowl clean and looked up at him with hope in her silver eyes. Do-yun smiled and went to get more. Outside, the storm had finally stopped. The sun was rising over the frozen hills of Kepler 7, painting the snow with shades of pink and gold. It was a new day, and for the Kang family, it was the beginning of something none of them could have imagined. 6 months had passed since the night of the storm. Spring had come to Kepler-7, though spring on this planet only meant the temperature rose to a few degrees above freezing. The colonists called it the warm time and laughed at their own joke. Veli was sitting at the kitchen table practicing her writing. The letters of the human alphabet were strange to her. They looked like insects crawling across the paper, but she was learning. Slowly, day by day, she was learning. Do-Yun watched her from the doorway. He had just come home from his morning shift at the repair docks. His hands were black with machine oil, and his back ached from bending over engines all day. But seeing Veli concentrating on her lessons made him forget about being tired. She had changed so much in 6 months. When she first came to them, she was so thin that her bones showed through her skin. Now she had gained weight. Her blue skin had a healthy glow. Her silver eyes, which had once been full of fear, now sometimes showed hints of curiosity and even happiness. But the healing was not complete. Do-Yun knew that. There were still nights when Veli woke up screaming. There were still times when she flinched at loud noises or hid food under her bed. Whatever had happened to her before the storm, it had left deep wounds that would take years to heal. The colony doctor had examined her and told Do-Yun what he could. Veli was a Velhari, a species from a distant world. Her people were refugees. Their planet had been destroyed by massive corporations that stripped it of all its resources. The Velhari survivors were scattered across the galaxy, and most of them lived in terrible conditions. They were treated as illegal immigrants, as problems to be solved, not people to be helped. Do-Yun did not care about any of that. To him, Veli was just a child who needed a home. Appa, Yuna came running into the kitchen. She had just finished her own homework and was full of energy as always. "Can we go to the market, please? Veli has never seen the market." Do-Yun smiled. "I need to wash up first. Give me 10 minutes. "I will time you," Yuna said seriously. She held up her small digital watch. Veli watched this exchange with curious eyes. She was still learning how this family worked. The easy laughter, the gentle teasing, the love that filled every corner of this small house. It was so different from everything she had known before. She remembered the cargo ship, the dark, cold room where she and her mother had hidden, the sickness that had taken her mother away bit by bit, while the traffickers who transported them did nothing to help. She remembered being left on this frozen planet when she became too much trouble to keep. But those memories were starting to feel further away now, like bad dreams that faded in the morning light. The market was a large dome in the center of the colony. It was the only place where there were plants and colors and life. Vendors sold vegetables grown in the colony's greenhouses. Others sold goods that arrived on supply ships from Earth and other human worlds. Veli held Yuna's hand tightly as they walked through the crowds. She had never seen so many humans in one place. They were so different from each other, tall ones and short ones, old ones and young ones, skin of many different shades, but they all had the same warm body temperature that Veli could sense. Humans burned so hot inside. It was one of the things that made them special. "Look," Yuna pulled her toward a stall that sold toys. "Do you want one? Appa will buy us one if we ask nicely." Veli shook her head. She did not feel right asking for things. She still could not believe that she was allowed to stay with this family. Every day, she expected someone to come and take her away. But Do-Yun saw where they were looking. He walked over and spoke to the vendor. A minute later, he came back with 2 small stuffed animals. One was a creature that Veli did not recognize. Do-Yun said it was called a rabbit from Earth. The other was a small blue animal that looked almost like a tiny version of a Velhari. "The blue one is for you," Yuna said, pushing it into Veli's hands. "Now we have matching toys. Mine is the rabbit, yours is the blue one. We can have adventures together." Veli held the toy close to her chest. No one had ever given her a present before. Her eyes became wet, and she did not know why. But not everyone in the colony was happy about Veli's presence. A week later, Veli started attending the colony school. Administrator Jiwoo had argued against it at first, but Do-yeon had insisted. If Veli was going to live among humans, she needed to learn how to be part of their society. On her first day, Veli sat alone at a desk in the back of the classroom. The other children stared at her. Some whispered to each other. She could not hear what they said, but she could guess. During the lunch break, 3 boys cornered her near the water fountain. "Alien freak," the biggest one said. His name was Hasung, and he was the son of a wealthy mining supervisor. "You don't belong here. This is a human colony." "Go back where you came from," another boy added. "Your kind are just beggars and thieves." Veli did not know what to say. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. She could feel tears building in her eyes. "She can't go back, dummy. Her planet is destroyed. That's why her kind come here like pests." Hasung stepped closer. "Maybe we should help clean up the pest problem." He reached out to push her. Veli closed her eyes and waited for the pain. But the pain never came. Instead, she heard a loud smack. She opened her eyes and saw Yuna standing in front of her. The little girl had just punched Hasung right in the nose. "Don't touch my sister," Yuna shouted. Hasung was so surprised that he stumbled backward. Blood was dripping from his nose. His friends were staring with open mouths. "She's not your sister," Hasung said, holding his face. "She's a dirty alien." "She is my sister." Yuna's voice was fierce. Her small hands were curled into fists. "And if you touch her again, I will hit you even harder." A teacher came running over to break up the fight. Yuna got in trouble. Do-yeon was called to the school. But when he heard what had happened, he did not scold his daughter. Instead, on the walk home, he bought her an ice cream. "Fighting is usually wrong," he explained to both girls. "But protecting family is never wrong. Remember that." That night, Veli could not sleep. She lay in her bed in the small room she shared with Yuna, listening to her sister's quiet breathing. "Sister," the word felt strange and wonderful at the same time. She got up quietly and walked to the main room. Do-yeon was still awake, sitting at the kitchen table. He was looking at a small photograph. When he saw Veli, he quickly put the photo away. "Cannot sleep?" he asked. Veli shook her head. She sat down in the chair across from him. Was that your wife?" she asked. Her human words were still rough, but she was getting better every day. Do-yeon was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. "Her name was Somi. She died 3 years ago, a sickness that the doctors could not cure." "I am sorry." "Thank you." Do-yeon looked at her with gentle eyes. "Veli, I want you to know something. When I found you in the storm, I did not think about laws or rules. I thought about Somi. I thought about what she would have done." He paused, remembering. "She was the kindest person I ever knew. She would have been the first one out in that storm, looking for anyone who needed help. When I saw you lying there, dying in the snow, I knew exactly what I had to do." Veli felt tears running down her face. "Why? I am nothing. I am just a refugee. Nobody wanted me. My own people sold me to traffickers. Why do you care?" Do-yeon reached across the table and took her hand. His hand was rough from work, but his touch was gentle. "Because every person has value," he said. "Because you are not nothing. You are Veli. You are kind and smart and brave. And you are my daughter now just as much as Yuna is. I do not care where you came from. I only care about where you are going." He squeezed her hand. "You are going to do great things someday. I can see it in you. You just need a chance, and I am going to make sure you get that chance." Veli cried harder than she had ever cried before, but for the first time they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of something else, something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. The next evening, Do-yeon started teaching Veli about machines. He brought home a broken heating unit from the repair docks and put it on the kitchen table. "This unit is dead," he said, "but we are going to bring it back to life. Watch carefully." He showed her how to open the casing, how to identify the different parts, how to find what was broken. Veli watched with wide silver eyes. She understood everything immediately. "You see this wire?" Doyun pointed to a thin metal strand. "It is disconnected. That is why the unit does not work. But most people would look at this machine and think it is destroyed. They would throw it away and buy a new one." He handed her a small tool. "You try, connect the wire." Veli's hands were small but steady. She touched the wire carefully, feeling where it needed to go. It was like the machine was talking to her, telling her what was wrong. She made the connection. The heating unit hummed to life. Doyun smiled with pride. "See, you understand machines because you listen to them. Most people just force things to work. You ask them what they need." From that day on, Veli spent every evening learning about engineering. She had found her gift. And slowly, one day at a time, she was finding herself too. Late at night, after Doyun had gone to bed, Veli sat in the dark living room. She was holding her blue stuffed toy and looking out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there was the place where her home world used to be. Somewhere out there were others of her kind, struggling to survive in a universe that did not want them. But here, in this small house on a frozen planet, she had found something precious, something she thought she would never have again. "Family." She whispered something into the darkness, a word she had been afraid to say, a word that meant everything. "Appa." "Father." She was home. 5 years had passed. Veli was now 17 years old and Yuna was 12. The colony had changed and so had they. Veli had grown tall for her species, though she was still shorter than most humans. Her blue skin had deepened to a richer shade, and her silver eyes held a quiet confidence that had not been there before. She was the top student at the colony's technical academy, and her designs for mining equipment had already saved the colony thousands of credits. Yuna had grown too. She was no longer the fierce little girl who punched bullies in the nose. Well, she was still fierce, but now she directed that energy into training. She wanted to be a pilot someday. She wanted to fly among the stars. Doyun had more gray in his hair now. The years of hard work had left their marks on his body. His back ached in the mornings and his hands were stiffer than before. But he was happy. He had 2 daughters who made him proud every single day. The Kang family had built a good life together. They ate breakfast together every morning. They helped each other with problems. They laughed at bad jokes and argued about whose turn it was to clean the dishes. It was a simple life, a peaceful life. But peace, as Doyun knew, never lasts forever. The trouble came on a cold Tuesday morning. A Galactic Union ship entered orbit around Kepler-7. This was not unusual. Union ships came sometimes for inspections or deliveries, but this ship was different. It was a command vessel, the kind that carried high-ranking officials. Administrator Beek Jiwoo called a colony meeting. Everyone gathered in the central dome, whispering nervously to each other. Union inspections usually meant paperwork and headaches. The doors opened, and a group of officers walked in. Their leader was a tall man with sharp eyes and a uniform covered in medals. His name tag said Commander T-In-Soo. Doyun felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He did not know why, but he sensed that this man was dangerous. Commander In-Soo spoke briefly about the inspection's purpose. Then his eyes swept across the crowd and stopped. He was looking directly at Veli. "You," he said, his voice was calm but cold, "step forward." Veli did not move. She felt frozen, like she was back in that storm from years ago. "I said step forward." In-Soo's voice grew harder. "Unregistered Velhari refugee. I have read the reports. You have been living in this colony for 5 years without proper processing." "She has been registered," Doyun spoke up. He stepped in front of Veli. Administrator Jiwoo can confirm. All paperwork was completed. Insu smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Colony-level registration is not the same as Galactic Union registration. Under Union Law 739, all alien refugees must be processed through official Union channels. Those channels lead to proper refugee centers where individuals can be evaluated and assigned to appropriate locations. Everyone knew what refugee centers really meant. They were labor camps in all but name, places where aliens worked until they died, with no rights and no hope of escape. "She is not going to any center," Do-Yun said. His voice was steady, but his heart was pounding. "She is my daughter." Insu raised an eyebrow. "Your daughter? She is not even your species. She is an illegal refugee who should have been processed 5 years ago. By harboring her, you have committed a federal crime." The dome went silent. People looked at each other nervously. Some of them had known Veli for years. They had watched her grow up, seen her work hard, admired her intelligence. But the Union was powerful, and no one wanted to be on the wrong side of the law. "The penalty for harboring illegal refugees," Insu continued, "is imprisonment and loss of custody of any human dependents. In your case, that would mean your biological daughter." Do-Yun felt like he had been punched. They were threatening to take Yuna away from him. "You have 2 days to surrender the Velhari girl for processing," Insu said. "If you do not, I will have you arrested. Think carefully about what matters more to you." The commander turned and walked out. His officers followed. The dome slowly emptied as people went back to their lives, talking in hushed voices. The Kang family walked home in silence. No one knew what to say. That night, Do-Yun sat alone in the kitchen. He had spent hours going through every law, every regulation, looking for a way out. But the Union's rules were clear. Veli should have been processed years ago. By keeping her, he had broken the law. Veli found him there at midnight. She sat down across from him, just like she had on that first night 5 years ago. "Appa," she said, "you know what you have to do." Do-Yun looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Let them take me." Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "I will not let them hurt you. I will not let them take Yuna away from you. You saved my life. I can never repay that, but I can do this. I can protect you." "No," Do-Yun's voice was hard. "Absolutely not. Please listen to me." Tears were forming in Veli's silver eyes. "I was always borrowed time. I always knew this day might come. You gave me 5 years of happiness, 5 years of having a family. That is more than I ever dreamed of having." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I love you," she said. "I love Yuna, but I am not worth losing everything you have worked for. I am not worth you going to prison. I am not worth Yuna losing her father." Do-Yun was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to a cabinet in the corner. He pulled out a thick folder and put it on the table. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. Veli shook her head. 5 years of documentation." Do-Yun opened the folder. Inside were hundreds of papers, reports, and testimonies. Every improvement you made to the mining equipment, every life your safety designs have saved, every contribution you have made to this colony. He spread the papers across the table. 13 miners are alive today because of the ventilation system you redesigned. The colony saves 40% on energy costs because of your heating efficiency improvements. The children's school has better air quality because you fixed a problem no one else could solve." He looked at her with fierce eyes. "You are not borrowed time. You are not a burden. You are valuable, not because of what you can do, but because of who you are, and I am going to prove it." Veli stared at the papers. She had not known that anyone was keeping track. "Appa, the Union does not care about any of this. They only care about rules." "Then I will make them care." Do-Yun's jaw was set with determination. "I was a military engineer before I came to this colony. I know how the union works. They respect results. They respect value. I am going to show them that sending you away would be a mistake they cannot afford to make." The next day, Do-yun went to work, but he was not fixing machines. He was talking to miners, to engineers, to everyone whose life Veli had touched. "Will you speak for her?" he asked each one. "Will you tell the Union what she means to this colony?" One by one, they agreed. The miners whose lives she had saved, the engineers who had learned from her designs, even Administrator Jiwoo, who had been skeptical at first, agreed to testify. Word spread through the colony. People who had ignored Veli for years suddenly remembered kind things she had done. Small things, helping a child with homework, fixing an old woman's broken heater for free. Always quiet, always humble, always giving. On the second day, Commander Insu returned, but this time he was not in control. The central dome was packed with colonists. They had come to watch. They had come to support. Do-yun stood before the commander. Behind him stood Veli, Yuna, and dozens of colonists who had volunteered to speak. "Commander," Do-yun said, "I have evidence to present before you make your decision." Insu looked annoyed. "This is not a trial, the law is clear." The law also allows for special consideration in cases where deportation would cause significant harm to a community. Section 12(7)(4) of the Refugee Processing Act. The commander's eyes narrowed. He had not expected this mechanic to know the law so well. For the next 3 hours, colonists spoke. Miners described how Veli's designs had saved their lives. Engineers showed the improvements she had made. Teachers talked about her kindness to younger students. And then Yuna stood up. "My sister is not illegal," she said. Her voice was strong and clear, just like it had been that day in the schoolyard 5 years ago. "She is family. She is one of us. And if you take her away, you are telling everyone in this galaxy that being good does not matter, that helping people does not matter, that the only thing that matters is what species you were born as." She looked directly at Insu. "Is that really the message you want to send?" The dome was silent. The commander's face was unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "I will need to consult with Union headquarters." His voice was stiff. "A decision of this nature requires approval from above." It was not a victory, but it was not a defeat either. That night, Do-yun sat on the steps outside their house. Veli came and sat beside him. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for fighting for me." "I will always fight for you." He put his arm around her. "That is what fathers do." They sat together in the cold night air, watching the stars. "Appa," Veli said, "what if they still say no?" Do-yun was quiet for a moment. "Then we will fight again, and again, until they say yes, because you are worth fighting for, Veli, and I will never stop believing that." 3 weeks later, the answer came. Veli was granted conditional residency. She would have to report to Union officials every year. She would have to prove her value to the colony. She would be watched and judged for the next 5 years. It was not freedom, but it was a chance. And that was all she needed. 7 more years had passed. Time moved quickly when life was full, and the lives of the Kang family had been very full indeed. Veli was 24 now. She was no longer the scared little girl who had almost died in a storm. She was Dr. Veli Kang, one of the most respected engineers in the outer colonies. Her designs for sustainable life support systems had been adopted by 37 different human outposts across the galaxy. She held patents that could have made her wealthy, but she gave most of her earnings to refugee aid programs. Yuna was 19. A pilot trainee with a reputation for fearless flying and an even fiercer temper. She had her father's determination and her mother's kind heart. Anyone who spoke badly about aliens in her presence quickly learned to regret it. Do-yun was 53. His hair was mostly gray now, and his hands shook when he worked with small tools. He had retired from heavy mechanical work but still consulted on engineering projects. The colony called him Elder Kang and respected him greatly. The family still lived in the same small house where everything had begun. They could have afforded a bigger home now, but none of them wanted to leave. This was where their story had started. This was where they belonged. On a clear spring morning, a message arrived at the colony's communication center. It was marked as urgent and addressed directly to Veli. She read it 3 times before she believed what it said. A massive refugee fleet had appeared at the edge of human space. Thousands of Velhari survivors. They were fleeing the final destruction of their homeworld's last habitable moons. The corporations that had destroyed their planet had finished the job. Other species had turned the fleet away. Too many refugees, they said, too much cost, not our problem. The Galactic Union did not know what to do. The fleet was dying in space, running out of food and fuel. Something needed to happen quickly, or thousands of people would perish. They needed someone the Velhari would trust. They needed someone who understood both worlds. They needed Veli. That afternoon, a familiar ship entered orbit. Veli watched it descend toward the landing pad with a strange mix of emotions. She knew who was on that ship. Commander T. Insu stepped out, but he was different now. His hair had gone gray. His medals were more numerous. His eyes, once cold and hard, now held something that looked almost like regret. He walked to where Veli was waiting and stopped in front of her. "Dr. Kang," he said. His voice was formal but not unkind. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." "You did not leave me much choice," Veli replied. "What do you want, Commander?" Insu was quiet for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He bowed his head. "I want to apologize," he said, "for what happened 7 years ago, for threatening your family, for trying to send you to a labor camp." Veli stared at him. This was the last thing she had expected. "I was following orders," Insu continued. "That was my excuse at the time. But I have spent many years thinking about what happened here, about a mechanic who stood up against the entire Galactic Union to protect a child who was not even his species." He looked up at her. "That man showed me what courage really means. I have tried to be a better person since then. I do not know if I have succeeded, but I have tried." Veli did not know what to say. She had hated this man for so long. She had imagined confronting him many times. But now, seeing him old and humble, she found that her anger had faded. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "Because we need your help." Insu's voice became serious. "The refugee fleet is desperate. The Union is paralyzed by politics. Other species refuse to get involved. Humanity is the only chance those people have. And you think I can convince humans to help? I think you are the only one who can. You are living proof that integration works, that Velhari and humans can be family. The Union leaders, the politicians, the ordinary citizens, they all need to see what I saw that day in the courtroom. They need to understand why it matters." Veli turned away. She looked out at the colony, at the home she had built over so many years. "What if I fail?" she asked quietly. "What if I speak and no one listens?" "Then you will have tried." Insu stepped beside her. "And that is all any of us can do. But I believe you will succeed, because you have something most people lack." "What is that?" "A story, a true story about compassion and family and hope, the kind of story that changes minds." That evening, Veli sat with her family at the kitchen table. She told them about the meeting and the request. "You should go," Doyan said immediately. "This is what you were meant to do." "But it could be dangerous," Veli protested. "The negotiations could take months. I might fail. I might make things worse." "You might," Yuna agreed. "Or you might save thousands of lives. Seems like an easy choice to me." Doyan reached across the table and took Veli's hand. His grip was weaker than it used to be, but his eyes were just as warm. "Do you remember what I told you on that first night?" he asked. "I said you were going to do great things. I said you just needed a chance. Well, this is your chance. This is the great thing you were meant to do. Veli felt tears forming in her eyes. Even after all these years, her father's faith in her still moved her deeply. What if I am not strong enough? You are, Do-yeon smiled. You survived things that would have destroyed most people. You built a life when everything was against you. You are the strongest person I know, Veli. Now go show the galaxy. The night before she left, Veli walked to the colony's outer wall. She found the exact spot where Yuna had first seen her, dying in the snow. The wall had been rebuilt since then, and the colony had expanded, but she still remembered. Footsteps crunched behind her. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. Could not sleep either, Do-yeon asked, coming to stand beside her. Too much thinking. They stood together in the cold night air. Above them, stars filled the sky like scattered diamonds. Scared, Do-yeon asked. Terrified, Veli admitted. Good, her father nodded. That means you understand what is at stake. The ones who are not scared are the ones who do not care enough. He put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, remembering all the times he had held her like this over the years, when she had nightmares, when she failed her first exam, when she missed her mother. He was always there. I do not know how to thank you, she whispered, for everything you have done, for saving me, for raising me, for believing in me when I could not believe in myself. Do-yeon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. You do not need to thank me. You already have, every day by being who you are, by becoming the person you were always meant to be. He turned to face her. Veli, you have already done the impossible once. You survived. You became family. You proved that love is stronger than any law or boundary or difference. Now go show the galaxy what that really means. The next morning, the family gathered at the landing pad. The ship that would take Veli to the negotiation station was waiting. Yuna hugged her sister so tightly that Veli could barely breathe. Come back safely, Yuna said. That's an order. Since when do you give orders? Since I decided I'm the boss of this family. Veli laughed and hugged her back. I will come back, I promise. Do-yeon waited until last. He embraced his daughter gently, mindful of his old bones. I am proud of you, he said. I have been proud of you every single day since you came into our lives. Whatever happens, remember that. Veli kissed his cheek. I love you, Appa. I love you too, daughter. She walked up the ramp into the ship. At the top, she turned for one last look at her family. Her father, gray and stooped but still standing tall. Her sister, waving with both hands like a child. Her home. Then the ramp closed, and the ship lifted into the sky. Veli watched through the window as Kepler-7 grew smaller below her. The frozen hills, the metal domes, the small house where she had learned what it meant to be loved. She touched the window with her fingertips. I will make you proud, she whispered. I promise. The ship turned toward the stars and jumped into faster-than-light travel. The final battle was about to begin. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. It could hold representatives from 100 different species, and today, almost every seat was filled. Veli stood at the speaker's platform in the center, feeling very small. Above her, delegates from across the galaxy watched and judged. Some looked curious, some looked bored, many looked hostile. The negotiations had been going on for 3 months. 3 months of arguments, excuses, and delays while the Velhari refugee fleet drifted in space. Supplies were running out, people were dying, children were starving. And still no one would help. The Torvani delegate spoke first. He was a tall being with skin like rough stone and eyes that glowed with orange light. We sympathize with the Velhari situation, he said. His voice rumbled like an earthquake. But our world cannot absorb so many refugees. The economic cost would be too great. The representative from the Zelkani collective nodded. She was a creature of flowing silver, constantly shifting shape. We agree. The Velhari have no resources to offer. They would be a burden on any society that takes them in. Veli listened to excuse after excuse. Too expensive, too risky, too different, not our responsibility. She had heard these words before. She had lived them. Finally, the council president called for her to speak. Veli walked to the central podium, her legs shaking. The lights were bright and hot. Thousands of eyes watched her. She had prepared a speech. She had spent weeks researching statistics, economic models, and legal precedents. She had charts and data and logical arguments. But standing there, looking at all those cold faces, she realized that none of that would matter. They did not need more facts. They needed a reason to care. She put her notes aside. "I was going to give you a presentation," she said. Her voice was quiet at first, but it grew stronger as she spoke. "I was going to show you graphs and numbers and prove that accepting refugees is economically beneficial, and all of that is true, but that is not why I am here." She paused, gathering her courage. "I am here because 17 years ago, I was dying in a snowstorm on a frozen human colony. I was 7 years old. My mother had already died. The people who were supposed to transport us had abandoned me because I was too much trouble." The chamber was silent now. All eyes were on her. "I had given up. I was too cold to move, too tired to care. I just wanted the pain to stop. And then a little girl saw me." Veli's voice cracked, but she kept going. "Her name was Yuna. She was only 7 years old. She could have walked past me. She could have assumed I was not her problem. She was just a child. What could she do?" Veli looked at the human delegation. They were listening intently. But she did not walk past. She pulled on her father's coat and said 4 words that saved my life. She said, "Dad, she's freezing." Tears were running down Veli's face now. She did not try to stop them. Her father was a mechanic named Kang Do-yun. He was not rich. He was not powerful. He was just an ordinary man trying to raise his daughter on a hard world. But he picked me up and carried me home. He stayed up all night to save my life. And when the authorities came to take me away, he stood in front of me and said, "She stays." She looked around the chamber. Some delegates were looking away, uncomfortable. Others were watching with new expressions on their faces. "He broke the law for me. He risked prison. He risked losing his own daughter. And why? Because he believed that every person has value. Because he saw a dying child and knew that he could not do nothing." Veli wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I have heard your arguments. Too expensive. Too risky. Not our responsibility. I have heard these words my whole life. They were true when I was abandoned on that frozen planet. They were true when the Union tried to send me to a labor camp. They have been true every time someone looked at a person in need and decided that helping was too hard." Her voice grew stronger. "But here is what I learned from a simple mechanic on a frozen world. Those calculations are wrong. They are wrong because they leave out the most important thing." She looked directly at the council. "They leave out who we are. They leave out who we choose to be. They leave out the fact that our actions define us, that when we turn away from suffering, we become smaller, and when we reach out to help, we become greater." She pointed at the image of the refugee fleet displayed on the main screen. "There are 12,000 people on those ships, 12,000 people who have lost everything, their homes, their families, their hope. They have nowhere to go and no one to turn to." Her voice broke again. 17 years ago, I was alone in the snow and a human family saved me. They did not ask what I could give them. They did not calculate the cost. They simply saw someone who needed help and chose to act." She looked at the human delegation. "I am asking humanity to do what they have always done. What they did for me. Take these people in, not because it is easy, not because it is cheap, but because it is right." She took a deep breath. "I am living proof that your compassion is not wasted. I was given a chance and I used it. I became an engineer. I created designs that have saved human lives. I gave back everything I could, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because I was raised by humans who taught me what it means to care about others. She spread her hands. Give my people the same chance. Let them show you who they can become. Let them work beside you and build something new together, not as charity cases but as partners, as neighbors, as family. Her final words rang through the silent chamber. Because that is what humanity does. They find the freezing, the forgotten, the abandoned, and they say, she's ours now. Veli stepped back from the podium. Her legs were trembling. She had said everything she could say. Now it was up to them. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the human representative stood up. He was an older man with kind eyes and a voice that carried authority. His name was Ambassador Cho Taehyun, and he had been quiet through most of the negotiations. The United Human Colonies vote to accept full resettlement of the Velhari refugees, he said. We will provide ships for transport, resources for settlement, and support for integration. We will figure out the details later. Right now, people are dying. Let us go save them. A murmur ran through the chamber. The human delegation's vote alone was not enough, but it changed everything. One by one, other species began to reconsider. Some offered limited support. Others promised resources. The Torvani delegate, who had been so resistant before, agreed to provide building materials for new settlements. By the end of the day, the impossible had happened. The refugee fleet would be saved. The Velhari would have a new home. Veli collapsed into a chair, too exhausted to move. Commander Insu approached her. His eyes were wet. You did it, he said. You actually did it. We did it, Veli replied. Humanity did it. 1 year later. Kepler-7 colony had changed. 3,000 Velhari settlers now lived among the humans, and the community had expanded to accommodate them. There were new domes, new schools, new businesses. Blue skin was as common as pale or dark skin in the markets and streets. The integration was not always smooth. There were misunderstandings and conflicts, cultural differences that caused friction. But there was also friendship, cooperation, and love. Human children played with Velhari children. Families shared meals across species lines. Something new was being born. Veli stood at the colony's new welcome center, watching a shuttle descend from orbit. It was carrying the latest group of settlers, the last major transport from the refugee fleet. Doyun stood beside her, leaning on a cane. His body was weaker than ever, but his spirit was still strong. Yuna was on his other side, now a full pilot in the colony defense force. Nervous? Yuna asked. Veli nodded. A little. There are so many people counting on us to get this right. You will, Doyun said. You always do. The shuttle landed and the doors opened. Families began to emerge, looking around with wonder and fear. They had left behind everything they knew. They were starting over in a strange world. Veli walked forward to greet them. Among the crowd, she noticed a young Velhari girl, maybe 12 years old. She was holding a worn blanket and looking around with terrified eyes. She seemed completely alone. Veli's heart clenched. She knew that look. She had worn it herself once. She walked up to the girl and kneeled down to meet her eyes. Hello, she said gently. What is your name? The girl did not answer at first. She was too scared. But something in Veli's face, something familiar, made her relax just a little. Lyra, she whispered. Hello, Lyra, I am Veli. She reached out and took the girl's hand. I know you are scared, I was too once, but you are safe now, you are home. The girl stared at her. Home. Yes, home. It might not feel like it yet, but it will, I promise. Behind her, Doyun watched with tears in his eyes. Yuna put her hand on his shoulder. She learned that from you, Yuna whispered. Doyun shook his head. No, she always had it in her. I just gave her a chance to show it." They watched as Veli led the young girl toward the welcome building, speaking softly to her the whole way. Other volunteers were helping the rest of the settlers, guiding them to housing and food and the beginning of new lives. Above them, the sun was setting over the frozen hills. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple and gold. Human and Velhari ships moved together in orbit, building stations and habitats, working side by side. Something was being born here. Something that had started 17 years ago in a storm with a little girl's cry and a father's choice. Do-yun looked up at the sky and thought about his wife, Somi. He hoped she was watching somehow. He hoped she could see what their family had become. "We did good," he whispered to the stars. "We did good." That night the Kang family sat together in their old kitchen. Veli, Yuna, and Do-yun, together as always. The house was small and the chairs were worn, but it was full of warmth and love. So Yuna said, "What happens now?" Veli thought about the question. So much had changed. So much had been accomplished. But there was still so much more to do. "Now we keep going," she said. "We help the new arrivals adjust. We build bridges between our peoples. We show the galaxy that this can work." "And after that?" Do-yun asked, his eyes twinkling. Veli smiled. "After that we find more people who need help, and we help them too." She looked at her family, her heart full of gratitude. "Because that is what we do. That is who we are." Outside, the stars shone bright and cold. Somewhere among them, other ships were moving, carrying other refugees to new homes. The universe was vast and often cruel. But in that small house, on that frozen world, a single family had proven something important. Compassion was not weakness. It was the greatest strength of all. And it could change everything. Veli took her father's hand on one side and her sister's on the other. They sat together in comfortable silence, a family built not by blood but by choice. By love. By a single act of kindness on a frozen night, 17 years ago. When a little girl looked through a storm and said the words that changed the universe. "Dad, she's freezing." And her father answered, "Then let's bring her home."